KCAAradio.com.
KCAA.
Back. I'm Wallace Allen here on the case for truth and justice with the right information to help improve the situation. We are solutionary. We are looking for solutions. And you can't find the solution unless you can pronounce and understand the problem, that you have a problem, that you are in a circumstance and situation that needs improvement. And my goodness, we are in that circumstance and situation. I am going to ask a question, and I have expert with us today, Mr. Attorney Hugo Salazar. I'm asking the question to you as a general listening public, but I also have my expert who can, lead us down the path to hopefully some type of answer and understanding of not just the problem, but the solution and a path to comfort, because we are inundated with chaos and confusion. The question: is Trump manipulating his way to declaring martial law? He is placing troops on the southern border in the name of a fictional invasion. The court is allowing him to use the Alien Enemies Act to deport immigrants, documented or not, people that he simply declares to be invaders and therefore proof of a war. War justifies an emergency declaration which opens the door to martial law. And his apparent ultimate dream status of president for life. He has started so many fires of distraction that I fear we are ignoring his most dangerous plot. There is increasing chaos and confusion caused by his assault on the economy, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, education, foreign relations, etc., etc. This engineered chaos will fan the flames of resistance. Protest will increase, adding to the probability of a protest being simply described by him as an insurrection. Attorney Salazar, Hugo, please tell me this scenario cannot happen. And
good morning, Wallace.
How are you, my brother? God bless you.
Oh, I'm doing well. God bless you. God bless everybody.
I hope
Look,
things.
I'm gonna tell you right now. I'm gonna tell you something right here that's very, very, alarming. Okay, so, and I'm gonna answer your question. I got my paralegal and my former colleague. We were attorneys working together out on the southern border in 2018. I got to tell you this: this guy's crazy. This president is crazy. He got a notification on Thursday night from CBP's official website email notifying him, these two folks, that their citizenship status is no longer valid, that they're no longer here legally in the United States.
These are attorney friends.
These are attorney friends who I verified and saw their emails, and they get this email notifying them that their constitutional right of being a U.S. citizen. These are people born here in the United States, third generation Mexican-American folks, are telling them, you got to leave. So, and that's the craziness. But I wanted to start off with that crazy topic to tell you, this Trump, King Trump, as he wants to call himself, is crazy.
Well, now, right there, pointing out once again, we as a people, human nature often tells folks that they're secure as long as these issues are affecting other people. So as long as the title immigrant and illegal immigrant is passed,
Right.
there's some false sense of security to other citizens that believe, for whatever reason, that it'll only happen to them. But you have just described a situation where third generation Americans are
Right.
being told that they are no longer citizens and that they
No
have to
longer
leave the
citizens.
country?
In 7 days.
This,
That's
this is Attorney Hugo Salazar of San Diego area, correct?
right.
I mean,
That's right.
this is
These
not
are
a
folks.
scam. This ain't a.
This
This
not
is
a
not a
scam.
scam like they call.
No, no. This is our sitting president telling citizens that they don't perceive their citizenship as a valid citizenship status. That's the world we live in, and they're starting first. And I don't mean to detract from your question, Wallace, but I want to make sure I put this out. But they're starting first to set the legal framework and the political narrative to attack the most vulnerable, the legally less protected, the immigrants, the asylum seekers. And then they're going to start moving on forward to applying this to the U.S. citizens. And then they're going to start going out to applying these same policies. We were all, attorneys that were working out on the border, enforcing the rule of law by literally asking our government to follow the law. And now I can assure you, sure as the sun will rise, if they're coming after the U.S. citizens' attorneys for these positions, you better believe who's next. Everybody's next. So that's why this thing is not just something that affects some people, it affects all of us. But I wanted to answer your question because there's some particular legal term of art definitions that we need to talk about. To talk about whether, what allows King Trump the ability for him to declare martial law. So, but I don't want to move away from that topic.
No,
can I
everything
talk about that?
everything that you've said is in topic because we are once again alerting people. It's like a fire. Hugo, if we don't let people know that the house is on fire, they are going to be in a position to say, well, this is how Hitler in Germany
That's right.
took over. People sat by thinking that, well, it's going to only be them. Well, he's not that serious. Maybe we should simply, kind of ignore some of these signs there because no one could be that. But we find that he is. The idea of being that way is one thing, but having the ability and influence to make, and we're being called for a break, but last week my whole topic was about the importance of, is it more important for profit or for people? And we're going to go the people way. So I'm going to melt this announcement out and announce what the people need to know. And that's that we have a problem. We have Congress people. We have people who are over agencies that are now telling us that, hey, if you want to vote, you're going to have to go get a birth certificate. You're going to have to get proof. You're going to have to carry something that we used to laugh about as we watched these old movies in the 50s. Where's your papers? Where's your papers? First thing they'd ask, where's your papers? And we'd say, in America, we don't have to carry papers. But no, we have to do that. But yes, it's important for us to understand that there is a thing called martial law that gives the president tremendous powers. I don't even know the extent of them. But there's some steps and some things that need to occur for him to be able to do that. One of them is an emergency. But let me put that back into your hands. I want people to hear this from an attorney, someone that is not as emotional as I am.
I don't know what to tell you, Wallace. I am as emotional, probably more. So I'll tell you right now. But I'll tell you right now regarding
well, in your
law,
case, we're going to call it passion, okay?
Yeah, it's passion. Because you can't be, and I'll tell you this, in this day and age, under this law, under this regime, if you're not upset about what's going on, if you're not awake about what's going on, then what are you doing? You're just a passive onlooker supporting this president, so-called president, from taking the rights from all of us.
Well, he is the president. He is the
That's
president.
right.
You know,
He's the
let's say
president.
that because
Leave it at that.
I've heard people say, well, you know, he's the president. Well, yeah, he is, but he's not the
Right.
king. He's not the emperor. He's not
Mm-hmm.
in charge of as much as he would have you believe. So yeah, he's the president. So let's define that
Look,
and let's look at what that's supposed to be. It's not supposed to
that's right.
be the king with no clothes, the emperor wearing no
Yeah.
clothes. But yes, let's get back to
Martial
defining
law.
for martial
So
law.
martial law generally is a term of art that's referred to military control by Trump and his cronies over like your very basic civilian functions, like over court proceedings, meaning that he, in a nutshell, he takes over and he can detain anybody, and there are no this old Latin term called writs of habeas corpus, meaning that no civil attorney or criminal law attorney can file claims with both the federal or the state court, essentially federal in this case, to ask that the government release someone because there's a broken law, which we, in fact, I'll tell you a little later, we did use many writs of habeas corpus during the 2016-2020 Trump regime to get people out of detention. But in martial law is implying that you're seizing all rights, all civil law rights for people to get out of detention, to be able to have a court proceeding because of Trump's, or in this case, the presidency is saying this is national emergency. The Constitution is not necessarily defined, and these circumstances only occurred in very limited instances. You saw it during the Civil War. But the limitations of martial law, the president does not have the power unilaterally to declare martial law or to suspend the Constitution. And in essence, by this old case and back in 1866 that we all learned in law school, that it was, just a footnote that we thought we never going to be reading about or using in law. But now, lo and behold, 2025, we are thinking about it. Martial law, essentially, through this case called Ex parte Milligan, martial law cannot be imposed where courts are operating as civil law and functioning. It's in essence saying you just can't apply it. But under this thing called the National Emergencies Act or the Insurrection Act, a president can use emergency powers, but those powers are not unlimited. They're not unlimited. And they're subject to this key point: legal challenges and the congressional oversight. And that, for all of us, it's a little bit concerning, because if we don't got a Congress that has a backbone,
Right.
or we got courts that are bending over for Trump,
Right.
then we're in trouble. These declarations can allow a military group or Trump's little Gestapo to support law enforcement, okay, to act as police. But it's not full military police
Let
or
me
rule.
let me slow you down here just for a moment.
Yes.
In that, part of my question was, is he manipulating his way into the path to that state of emergency and the ability to declare that and to move toward martial law? You just described a compromised legislature, a compromised Congress, a compromised court system, a total compromising of people of so-called authority at the agency level. He has fired any general who has a real general sense of understanding of what their responsibilities are as military, and has replaced them with people who are puppets, people who will do whatever they need to do to please Mr. Trump, to please the so-called, quote-unquote, the president. So it appears that he is manipulating. He has set the stage, and that's what we're talking about. People, are they paying attention?
He's telling us the recipe. He's telling us the concern is not just that Trump is acting a fool as whatever he normally is. The concern is that we have an erosion an erosion of the systems of checks and balances that were supposed to stop these wannabe kings from doing these types of behaviors. That's the reason why this country was founded, to develop a system of checks and balances. But when you regulate how the federal courts can impose injunctions, as it just did, the Congress yesterday just passed a law that has to get ratified that limits injunctions to a national level, meaning that you can't, if a law is unconstitutional, they just can't apply it to the rest of the country. They only apply to their specific area there. And the fact that we don't have a Congress that clearly cares about the constitutional protections for every single American throughout the country. They don't care.
You're talking about federal judges being limited to having regional decisions as opposed to federal decisions. And that belies the whole purpose and even the titling of who these judges are.
Scary.
And the thing that we are looking at is, I think there's a word that we really need to put into the recipe here, and that's audacity. Because we've had presidents, I guess he's number 47 or 46 twice, 45 twice, and 45 and 47. And to have audacity to do things that no one else not only has ever done, but even discussed to do. Now, we did have a 3-term president, but somehow, once again, we're looking at charisma, and we're not looking at, I mean, as we look at Roosevelt's reign, we see a level of cooperation and growth, and of course you had war that made that occur. And he served 2 terms, and his 3rd term was taken over by, I think, Mr. Truman. So we have a history of it, but once again, when his term is over, Congress came immediately to the table and set into law a statute as opposed to an attitude that says a president should only serve 2 terms, but a statute that says a president should only serve 2 terms. So with that audacity, we see a man who had something that most presidents hadn't the ability to deal with, and that was 4 years on and 4 years off to figure out how to go back in and really do the damage or take over the way he wanted to do it, and under the influence and the threat of going to jail if he didn't win. And I think this is something that his motivation to be king, is it to be king, or is it to be a free man out of jail? And if he's going to be out of jail, he's definitely wants to be in charge. Now, one thing that I'd like to say about this man is that I don't think he's crazy. I think he constantly is giving us the crazy test. How crazy are we, the people, to allow him to do what he wants to do? And we find that this man has a charm about him that when people who haven't been around him, Bill Maher was with him last week at a dinner. Bill Maher talked about Trump like he had 4 tails and 13 ears that didn't work. And he sat down, had dinner with him, and he comes back praising Trump's personality, how nice the guy is. He actually laughs. The man has charisma. There's no doubt about it. He has the ability to charm apparently anyone that he can sit down with. So I think there's a danger in not giving him the respect that you would give a what's that dragon that if he was to kiss you, he'd actually kill you? That Komodo dragon? Yeah.
Yeah, Komodo dragon. Give him the respect he warrants.
So with that, this is our problem. Our problem is that we have a super smooth operator that's moving.
Drifter.
Yes, and he is motivated to do things that no one else in his position has ever done.
I'll add one piece to that, Wallace, because I
Please.
want to say about the charisma here. Look, this man, I mean, is a symptom of America. This man is a symptom of what, unfortunately, a large portion of Americans believe: racism, sexism. I mean, over blatant, criminal behavior. It's something that's not only tolerated but encouraged. His followers, it's like a cult. All right. I'll tell you, one of the things that we should be concerned about is not only this national injunction thing, limiting national injunctions, but the fact that this president is using these things called, essentially laws that are targeting people or law firms in this case. Historically, the Constitution limits, they're called bills of attainder. They're like laws targeting certain people. The Congress can't do that, right? Because that was the fear when the founding fathers started this country. But it's not limiting to the executive branch. So the executive branch is calling out and targeting these law firms and these individuals as a political vendetta. And what that does, it silences the lawyers. Back in 2018, when I used to work for a nonprofit in the border, where we used to campaign and do actual lawsuits against the Trump administration for national injunctions, particularly for some of the asylum stuff that we did. You know who used to help us? It was the large, big, top law firms in the country, because they're doing these pro bono hours, backing up, because some of these people had a conscience, because they saw, hey, this is bad, backing us up. But now that Trump is using his position to start targeting law firms, he's essentially silencing the legal opposition.
Worse than that, he's not simply silencing them, he's obligating them to do pro bono work for the government.
That is directly saying, hey, man, you know what? If there is an actual legal campaign against me, I'm going to send out my attorneys to do that. And that should be very concerning. Because I remember the last time we had conversations about whether a human being is a human being, whether it's a citizen, it's eerily to a lot of these old positions where you didn't think people were human beings or citizens in this country. And we should be concerned. The canary in the coal mine is dead.
Screaming.
It's screaming. No, it's not even screaming anymore. It's dead.
Dead. Oh my God.
They just got it dangling out there. And we should be concerned that our elected officials through the Congress and Senate is allowing this man to destroy this country. And I'm not being an alarmist, but when I saw my colleague receive an email from someone from CBP saying, and this is not just us, there was a couple, I didn't get it one to be clear here. So these are just colleagues, ex-colleagues. But some other individuals throughout the country who are immigration attorneys were getting these emails. It should start making you think, you know what? They're sending these types of announcements to leave immediately because they're using El Salvador, the Salvador prison, where there's no regulation, God knows where they're at, as a way to not only silence them, but take them out. Because if someone is picked up and they're being sent to El Salvador, you tell me who's protecting them?
Oh, no one's protecting them. But let's enlarge on who's actually in charge of that. That's American taxpayer money that's contracted El Salvador.
$300 million for 250 detainees. Think about that.
That's almost
$300 million.
That's almost as ridiculous as the money that we waste on fixing the so-called homeless problem, as opposed to helping people. We end up helping.
Wallace, you opened another can of worms.
I know, but it's a kind of thing that I want to point to, that we have so many concerns that when he throws a match over on any of these concerns and sets it on fire, like, okay, Social Security, I'm not going to take the money away. I'm just going to fire everybody that facilitates you getting it. Oh, healthcare, no problem. You can keep healthcare. I'm just going to fire all of the people that facilitate you getting it. Oh, education and research. Oh, yeah, that's important. We should keep that up. Except I'm going to I'm going to dismiss all of the grants and funds that are available to the colleges and the research companies that we have funded to help make America the greatest place or the strongest place or the most intellectual site or but we lose that. And I say manipulate because he moves like he's just moved through us. Our Congress, one of the first things that we note is that a president is not allowed to use his position to make money in the name of the people that he puts in his pocket. Never had big issues with that. And as soon as Trump came in and they say, well, okay, put your money in a trust account and come forward and, declare yourself. No, homeboy doesn't do that. He goes out and he puts his name on caps, sells caps and shirts and toilet paper with his name on it, all that kind of stuff. I'm just.
He's a grifter. He's a snake oil salesman.
But
who's selling out to everybody. He's got a base.
But his team.
That's what his base wants.
Now the thing. Now, okay. Here's the deal. Do I blame the grifter for being a grifter, or do I blame security for ignoring the fact that they let a grifter in, whose identification card said grifter, whose background check said grifter, whose whole concept and interview process says, I'm going to do what I can to make me a better man, stronger than you, and all your money and my money and your money too? This is what we're looking at, but we want to talk about him. But as we look at our solution has almost nothing to do with him. It has to do with people that we have elected and trusted and who were in office before him, simply standing up, simply doing what honoring. I can't say that old word for word, but I know that it does not include sticking your head up somebody else's attitude and doing their letting them be your puppeteer. These are folks. So solution-wise, and this is where we've got to go. There's no way in the world that I want to leave, the 15 million zillion people that should be listening without some type of path to securing our future. And it's our future and the future of the world, future of the planet, future. What do we do?
Wake up.
Okay.
Get involved. Vote.
Well, he's telling everybody to go to sleep. First thing he's saying is woke is not good. I mean, can you imagine when people accept a statement like woke is not good, and the only thing that is the opposite of woke is sleep, paying no attention. Don't be alert. Be dull. Be submissive. Don't be aggressive and worry for the truth.
We can't be passive onlookers, because onlookers, as we have been, look, during the Biden administration, I'll be frank with you, I wasn't very much involved in anything other than my practice. And quite frankly, now we have to demand more. We have to demand more from our elected officials, because it's not just a matter of tariffs costing you more in the pocketbook. It's not just things like that, but it's a thing about losing fundamental rights. Fundamental rights where you have a so-called wannabe king essentially stripping the legal rights of millions of people, because we didn't get a chance to even talk about his desire to strip away, to give immunity for police officers.
Oh, yeah.
Across the nation.
Talk about
who's that going to target? Black and brown people, beware. Because now you're going to have a president who's going to give every single police officer with a badge and a gun the green light to do whatever they want without any consequences.
And right now, that's pretty much the case. A city has to separate it. Well, the city has to separate itself from the conduct of a policeman in order for the city to not be held liable. But they're always going to be held liable. The city that hires him. So if Trump steps in and takes the position of super union, because the unions are the ones that have kept police
Yeah.
from being prosecuted for their obvious wrongdoings, and certainly I'm not against unions at all, but
Yeah.
I am against stupidity, and that's what we're
Uh,
talking
I'm
about.
I'm not against unions either, but I'm more for the victims who've been struggled and who have been shot and who have been hunted down. But I'll tell you this, Wallace. What about, I have this case, because I've talked about this specifically for a case.
Mm-hmm.
What about if a client has been illegally deported back, to their respective country? I have a client who was this client was not in a civil case with me, but she was a client. She got picked up at 3 p.m. At 12 p.m. from Anaheim, and got sent to Mexico by 6 p.m. No judge, no detention, no word said. Just picked up and sent back. And this, I'm not talking about just some recent arrival. This lady was a pregnant mother who's been here since she was 3 years old.
That's insane.
So let's think about that. If they're sending people back, where's their ability to be able to enforce the law civilly here in the United States? They ain't gonna do it. That's what I'm trying to convey. He's setting the mechanism in play to be able to mass deport anybody, immigrant, citizen, political opponent, so that he sets up the legal framework so that he can violate people's rights, so they won't be able to defend themselves,
Or stacks,
regardless of where they're at. That's the fear.
or stacks the courts up with so much
Right.
of a backlog of incidents like this, allowing the courts to move slowly to announce that he's wrong. But meanwhile, those people are deported, gone, lost, disappeared, and like you say, who knows what has gone on with them, and the effect that it has on the rest of us is twofold. Some people will get mad and crazy enough to get out and do what ex-military people do. Everything that everybody, and that's the danger that I want to move to, is that we've got people out here who've been trained to kill. And they've been sent home and mistreated for, in some cases, the entire time that they've been home. And we've got a president and a system now that is taking veterans very lightly, misusing them. Homeless, we talk about homeless people. We talk about people without services. We talk about people who need medical services. And the veterans that are, people that have been trained to kill, are being disturbed and left alone and still able to get guns.
Right.
And so the insurrection potential that Mr. Trump would actually benefit from, in terms of my belief of his apparent desire, president for life, emperor, king president, King Trump, he benefits from an insurrection. He benefits from people being responsive enough to go out and shoot somebody, to go out and cause the disruption that gives him the right now to say, there it is, a state of emergency in the state of California. A regional emergency, though they don't want federal judges to speak at a federal level, a regional or a very local emergency will be enough for him to call a national emergency and move toward calling for martial law. Does it meet all the standards? No. All he's got to do is create that executive order. We're in executive order territory. He doesn't have to get things approved. He simply has to make a declaration. And that's all that's been taking place since January. We haven't passed any new laws. Nothing has gone through, but look at what executive orders have caused. The confusion, the chaos, the disruption, the economic, for us to be sitting here telling people, you might ought to pay attention to this potential takeover, and folks are saying, listen, I can't buy eggs and grits. I can't afford bread. And you're telling me to worry about some conspiracy that, you and Hugo and a few other people have come up with?
But sadly, Wallace, you have to. You have to be aware. Unfortunately, our elected officials, our leaders, right, community leaders, those that can speak, right, those that can speak, those that are in the position on the table, you can't just sit silently there, because those that can't in our community, we're barely surviving, being able to pay rent, being able to afford, to provide food on the table for their families. They're not going to go out there and be advocating for the constitutionality of a law. No, that's why you need the attorneys, you need the community advocates, you need the elected officials to do their job. Because if they think that somehow this man is going to present an independent sense of morality, the man's not. Trump's not. He's already told us this. And he knows it. His little circle of friends are getting rich off this chaos.
Oh, my goodness.
The stock market crash, it was planned. I mean, I don't know. That's not my area.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you this, and I'm sure it will. Someone will show up and later be like, hey, they made billions out of this. And while us on Main Street are barely getting by paying rent. And that's the thing that really should be, so to tell you what the ultimate benefit here, what we need to do, we got to focus step by step. Be aware, contact your local city elected official, ask him to have an opposition to Trump, speak up, and making sure that the next 2026 congressional elections, I mean, that's for the whole game. If we're able to stop the congressional elections to swing to the Republicans, then we can put some sort of stops, because the Congress controls the purse. If you're able to do that, then at least you have some steps to stop them.
Well,
because if you don't have that, then we are SOL.
Strategy-wise, I don't think we should allow it to be broken down to simply between Democrats and Republicans. I really, up to almost a couple of weeks ago, I don't know, wanted to not have to mention his name, because there are so many people who are just absorbed by love and commitment and to his charisma, and I can understand that. I've seen women and men fall in love with people who are just rotten to the core. And if you tell them that, if your best friend's got this girl or guy or whatever that is rotten to the core, well, how do you know they're rotten? Well, because as soon as your friend turned their back, this loved one supposedly was hitting on you, or you saw him hitting on somebody else. How do you tell them? And if you do, what makes them believe you? You're just jealous. So my strategy has been, well, let's go along with right and wrong. Let's look at what's legal and illegal. But our courts have confused us on that. But I still think that we have got to figure a way to put this strategy forward in some manner that does not automatically reject someone else simply because of the truth or the position that we're taking. I think that the house on fire, everyone says anybody in the house that's on fire should get out, or that the fire should be put out. I think that's a truth that most people will agree with. But how do we frame what we're talking about in a way that does not make people automatically feel defensive or offensive with each other, instead of, don't be mad at the player, be mad at the game. And the game we're in right now of divide and conquer, of wealth against poverty, it's maybe that's the way to look at it. Them that's got and them that ain't. Because it seems to be the beneficiaries of what we're looking at is that the people who've got it want to keep it and not only keep what they've got, take the little bit away from those who don't have it, or keep them so confused that they can't organize to protest, can't organize to to ask for more, can't organize to actually create more for themselves. I'm at an impasse with that part. I'm saying, gosh, I know we need to grow gardens, but everybody, at some point, is going to we share seeds. What do we do? How do
Look,
we
I'll
do
tell you.
this?
I will say one thing about the us versus they, and the folks, regular folks versus oligarchs. It really is that way, and I say, in my practice as a civil attorney, I do a lot of labor law, like lawsuits against discrimination, right? People who've been fired wrongfully. Let me say this: we are headed towards a very tough time in our country, in the world, to be honest with you, for labor. The rise, and I'm a big proponent of technology, okay, so saying that here. But AI, artificial intelligence, AI, is going to give this workforce as a country, white collar, middle class workers, a gut punch to a degree that I've never seen before. And add to that there'll be a lot of people who will be displaced by AI. And when you have a displacement of this magnitude, like we see now with the Trump administration letting people go, right, and they're pretty much getting replaced by AI, you will see that in the next, couple years, I would say 2-3 years, in the United States, as this type of technology is being implemented throughout all the Fortune 500 companies throughout the country. And then you have a president and a system that's pretty much in the payroll of these billionaire oligarchs who's going to keep perpetuating that because they want the people to be impoverished. They want the people to be desperate. They want the people to literally be on their knees and ask for a handout. Because when they are like that, they realize that they have the power and they can do whatever they want. So to answer your question, sooner or later, whether we like it or not, we all going to be on the same side because the system is already pushing us to that.
Well,
so we got to start thinking about it proactive.
At a certain point, there's a value to cheap labor. But you're pointing out that with AI, cheap labor, it really has no point and no use. The other thing about that, though, is does AI have the ability to be a consumer? And that's the value of people. The people, because you can be the billionaire, but once you've been a billionaire and you've got people kissing your elbows and doing everything you want them to do, you need people around to do that. Otherwise, it's just, what's the point of being a billionaire if you don't have people kissing your elbows and serving you and treating you like a billionaire? What good does it do to be able to produce great products if there's no one in a position to buy them or use them? Whether it's technology or tires for a car that can they afford to have. So we have a social impasse here that it's a conflict of morals, it's a conflict of possibilities, and what do we do? I think I'd like to point something out. Last week, there were protests all over the country. Protests against Trump and his policies. Here in the city of San Bernardino, there was a rally. Had 500-600 people show up. And it was a rally that was put together by a group called Pastors United. Diverse group of people, diverse churches, and the kind of gathering that politician just you kind of like to see that if you're going to get a chance to speak there, and if you get there and you weren't scheduled to speak, you want to kind of step up and see if you can get on the agenda. Gathering of people demonstrating concern for each other, love for each other, and respect for God seems to be a very powerful thing that we tend to ignore. As we go back and look at the civil rights movement and see the issue, the things that occurred that made people move, was television coverage of the powerful resistance to civility that racists were providing and putting on for show. Now they're trying to control TV, but with social media, we have many more abilities to see what's actually going on. People standing up, people caring for each other, people demonstrating that four-letter word that's so critical, love for each other, respect for our future, respect for our children, respect for our past. I don't want to oversimplify it because we can see that our God is a very interesting God in that, the thing is that if you believe in God, you're not supposed to be afraid to die. But I think most of us are looking for longevity. And the thing that I would say is that if we don't excuse me, if we don't have something that we are willing to die for, are we really living? I was once told that would you kill somebody and under what circumstances? Would you kill somebody because you hate them? Or would you kill somebody because they were attempting to kill something that you love? These are philosophical questions until you look up and find that you are under attack, that people are moving into your community and killing your children or convincing your children to smoke cigarettes and drink alcohol and use drugs that are going to kill them off. And man, the parents know how to step up after the emergency occurs. I think what we're asking for is people to be empathetic and look at the emergencies that have occurred with other folk and realize that you're next if you don't step up and do something.
But it really starts to bring it to the core level. I do agree with you, Wallace, that it starts, at the more simplest terms, man, like love, man. Love in your family. It starts with responsible parents. It starts with raising your kids right to be, model citizens, to be engaged in their community. Because I'll tell you this, as a parent myself, I see, a lot of other parents, man, who are allowing TikTok to raise their kids. When those kids are being raised by someone else and they don't have a history, a knowledge of the struggles that their parents went through, their grandparents went through to get where they're at right now, they lose sight of what it needs to be done. I'm not saying this is everybody, because I've seen, the last protest I saw in January 20th and some of these things I've seen around the country. I see a lot of youth, a lot of youth who's out there. So it's not everybody. But in order for that youth to make these protests a movement, a national movement, you got to get everybody on board. And that does come from your family, from these conversations at the kitchen table. And we should ask ourselves a big question, man. Like, are families even talking to each other and discussing these topics?
Right.
And I mean, I'll tell you that sadly, this is of all walks of life, all races, okay? I mean, and I can only speak from my, Chicano, Latino experience, but I do see a lot of these kids out here and these parents, like, working 2-3 jobs, literally 2-3 jobs to make ends meet. There is no more a family unit to discuss any ideas. They're just, like, surviving, and they're just on autopilot, allowing social media and television, mostly social media now, to control the narrative. And the narrative there, as we've seen through Facebook and TikTok after this election, it's to pacify us, keep us ignorant, and literally keep our eyes down while there's this crisis taking place on the rest of the country, because that benefits only somebody. I mean, speaking with Facebook, I use Facebook, and I'll tell you this: I've never seen so many advertisements for right-wing propaganda being pushed at me throughout Facebook. I never seen it. Hey, did you like Trump? Did you like this? Right. And it's part of a game to pacify the youth, and it can all be fixed and resolved by it's easier said than done. They're reminding the parents and the families, like, hey man, take care of yours. let them know about where they're at, where they come from, let them know that they feel loved, so they can engage with you rather than engage with their cell phone.
Yeah, that when we say love, I guess we have to define it. It means participate. It means to demonstrate interest, have interest. It means to reach out. It means to know, to sincerely want to know what's going on in other people's lives. We need to know who lives across the street, down the street, around the corner. We need to have the ability to knock on the door or accept a knock on the door and be sensitive to the needs of others. We cannot allow the classification of black, white, brown, yellow to decide who we're going to function with. We have to use another level of glue to determine it. We have to. I can like who likes me, but I'm going to have to figure out how to deal with those who don't like me in a way that I would be comfortable with them dealing with me. I have to treat others the way I want to be treated, whether we are friends, associates, good buddies, or not, because we are sharing the same bathroom called Earth. Mm-hmm. And we have to take turns, we have to take consideration about the resources. We can't ignore each other's presence. And somehow we've been pushed into believing that we can, and not only ignore each other's presence, but push each other aside. And we see that on the highways. We see that standing in lines. We see that and it's something that individually we have to deal with. This is the quickest hour on radio. Attorney Salazar, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to close out, and then I'm going to say my final out.
I'll say to everybody, take care of your family, take care of your community. We're not insulated. We're going to be, headed obviously some tough times with these tariffs and this administration, but don't lose hope, because the same way, people lost hope in the past and thought things couldn't get passed because of the Civil Rights Act. Even the election of former President Obama, man, it happened by people who believed and who had the passion and who had the love and the conviction to see a better future. I still believe that, even though the times have changed, I believe for better days. So just make sure to wake up and get out there, because that's the only way to get out of this hole.
That's the deal. And understand that our power is generally described by the resistance. Our ability to solve a problem is going to be decided by the power of the problem. We've got enough of a problem out here to become great, as we prove that the problems are not bigger than our ability to solve them. This is Empire Talks Back. I'm Wallace Allen, on the case for truth and justice, and I'm depending on you to do your part. See you guys next week under two circumstances. One, if the good Lord's willing. Two, if the creek don't rise. Next week is Easter. Prepare yourself. Glory in the glory of God, and we'll see you then.
NBC News on KC.